Brace yourself, this isn't a feel-good puppy tale, it's a gut punch of survival. What would you do if you stumbled on a blind, starving pup so fragile he could vanish in a heartbeat? I still remember that first night in the alley, how the lamplight fractured against the damp pavement, casting long, trembling shadows that flickered like threats. There he was, curled into a tight spiral beneath a stack of broken crates, ribs pressing against scabbed skin so sharply it looked like knife's edge. His coat was a dusty patchwork of mud and fear, and every shallow breath rattled in his chest like wind through a hollow bone. I froze, heart hammering, because something in his desperate whimper felt like someone scraping at the edges of my soul. I knelt a few feet away, my flashlight beam dancing across his blind eyes, cloudy orbs that reflected nothing but emptiness. From his ragged breaths came a tiny, ragged cough, as if he were trying to cough up hope itself and failing. Around us, the city hummed with indifferent life, distant sirens, muffled engines, a drunk slurred laughter echoing off graffiti-stained brick walls. But in that moment, everything beyond him faded to grey silence. I reached for the bag at my side, just one of those old backpacks I carry on my evening rounds with the rescue group. Inside, a crumpled sandwich still wrapped in wax paper, half a bottle of water, a soft rag. I sat down on my heels, careful not to jolt the fragile creature, and unwrapped the sandwich. The scent of cheese made my stomach twist. How could anything smell so alive to someone so close to fading? I tore off a tiny piece, pressed it gently against his nose. At first, he recoiled, as if expecting poison. Then, after a moment that felt like an eternity, he leaned forward, sniffed, and swallowed. The world around me snapped back, the distant honk of a late bus, a barking dog somewhere upriver, the soft scuff of my jacket as I slid closer. He ate with a hunger that bordered on frantic, tears of relief pooling in my eyes. But when the last crumb slipped down his throat, he winced and tried to shift, only to collapse back into himself like a broken doll. I scooped him up in my arms, surprised at how light he was, lighter than hope itself. Every muscle in his tiny frame trembled, and I whispered, "Hang on, buddy. I've got you." My voice cracked, but I held him tighter, as if sheer will could stitch together his failing body. The ride to the clinic was a blur of screeching tires and flashing streetlights. In the back seat, he lay cradled in a blanket I'd begged from the shelter, his body so frail it felt like holding mist. I watched him through the rearview mirror, ears twitching at every honk, every pulse of neon. And then, as if the world wanted to remind me of its lurking cruelty, a car door slammed nearby, and he suddenly jerked, eyes wide with phantom terror. Inside the clinic, the bright white lamps felt like a promise and a threat. Sterile floors gleamed, the air smelled of antiseptic and muted panic. I set him on a stainless steel table, heart pounding so hard it echoed off the walls. A nurse hovered, hair tied back so tightly her scalp must ache, clipboard in hand. She didn't flinch at the sight of him, but I could see something in her eyes, compassion coiled with worry. A veterinarian in scrubs approached, voice calm and measured, but I heard an undercurrent of urgency. He lifted the puppy gently, checking for fractures, pressing ribs to gauge how deep that hollow well had grown. Every time his gloved fingers brushed the pup's flanks, the little body shuddered. "He's severely malnourished," the vet said, scribbling notes. "And those eyes, congenital cataracts, advanced. He's been stumbling blind for as long as he's been alive." The word stung, blind from birth, doomed by chance. Yet when the vet examined his belly, I saw a spark of life in the pup's tail, a tiny tremor that said, "I'm not done yet." The room fell silent, save for the soft hum of the ventilator behind us. Machines blinked. I swallowed hard, my voice a whisper. "Can he make it?" The vet paused, looking me straight in the eye. "He's got spirit," he said. "But spirit isn't nutrition. We'll start for fluids and a slow refeeding plan. He needs warmth and round-the-clock care. It won't be easy." In that moment, I realized how fragile hope can be, how a single look in a blind pup's eyes can feel like a mirror held to your own fears. I watched the vet tape a tiny catheter into a vein so thin it might as well have been a hair. The puppy yelped, a high, sharp sound that made my chest seize. I reached out impulsively, trying to grab the vet's hand, but held back. No one wanted another trembling adult in the room. Instead, I stood close, murmuring nonsense words, willing my tone to be a soothing blanket. He trembled at first, but as the fluid dripped in, his shudders eased. I saw the lid of his ear flutter like a flag in slow motion. That was the moment I understood he was fighting. In him, there was something unbreakable. The vet worked efficiently, took x-rays, cleaned wounds I hadn't even noticed, charted vitals. Outside the window, the night sky was ink black, sprinkled with lights that felt distant and indifferent. Yet inside that room, every second measured life or oblivion. I hovered by the door, phone in hand, texting the shelter, one blind pup, emergency. Get ready. Then came the moment that froze me, the monitors flatlined for a heartbeat so fleeting I thought my mind was playing tricks. A silence fell, no machines, no footfalls, just the raw thump of my own pulse. And then suddenly, the line spiked back. The vet exhaled sharply. I exhaled too, trembling. He met my gaze. He's stubborn. Let's keep it that way. His tone was matter-of-fact, but in his eyes, I saw a flicker of something akin to awe. I left the clinic hours later, carrying a small carrier with a heating pad inside. The puppy lay curled, for line taped to his foreleg, breathing shallow but steady. Outside, dawn was brushing the horizon in pale pink. I paused on the curb, watching that fragile bundle, how he moved his head toward the warmth, how his chest rose and fell. I whispered, "Tomorrow, you'll have more than crumbs." And for the first time, I believed it. But as I walked away, the echo of that flat line lingered in my ears, a reminder that nothing here was guaranteed. Yet in those blind eyes, I'd glimpsed fierce survival, something that might just spark a miracle. In the alley, I'd found a creature abandoned by chance. In the clinic, I saw him declared fragile, yet unyielding. What would the next dawn bring? The unknown stretched before us like a silent corridor, both terrifying and exhilarating. And all I knew was that I couldn't turn back now, because some stories refuse to let you walk away. The city held its breath as I carried him up the narrow stairwell to my small apartment, our third scene. Morning light filtered through grimy windows, painting the chipped paint of the walls in pale, hopeful gold. I set him down on the threadbare carpet, heart hammering at how foreign this place must feel to a blind creature. The air smelled faintly of leftover coffee and last night's rain seeping through a cracked pane. He hesitated, head cocked, nostrils flaring as he lumbered forward on uncertain paws. Every scuff of his nails sounded like distant thunder in that quiet room. I knelt beside him, voice soft but steady. "Left," I murmured, guiding his shoulder with my fingertips. He pivoted, whiskers twitching, before plunging onward. The world was a maze of shadows and echoes, I was his only map. Each step he took sent a ripple of nerves through me, one misplaced thud of a foot against the coffee table, one yelp if I spoke too sharply, and I'd feel it in my chest. For a few days, we settled into a fragile routine, morning feedings in the kitchenette, midday naps curled in a laundry basket lined with fleece, evenings spent on the balcony where the city's hum pressed against us like a living thing. In these ordinary moments, my hopes grew. He would eat, he would sleep, he would trust. But beneath the calm, a current of unease pulsed. I'd catch his head jerk back at a sudden car horn, see his body freeze at the distant echo of children's laughter, and realize how exposed he truly was. Then, late one afternoon, the building manager thundered at my door, our unexpected fourth location. His silhouette dark against the hallway's jaundiced light, clipboard in hand, eyebrows carved into rigid lines. I opened the door a crack, heart lodged in my throat. "You can't keep animals here," he barked, voice bouncing off the peeling wallpaper. "Health code violations. Noise complaints. You're on thin ice." I swallowed. "He's injured. I'm fostering him. Just until he's strong." He leaned closer. "Doesn't matter. Pets aren't allowed." His gaze flicked past me. I guessed he'd spotted the laundry basket beneath the table. "Get rid of it, or you'll be evicted." My hands clenched the doorframe. "Please, just a few more days, he needs care." He shook his head, as immovable as the building itself. Then, without another word, he turned and stomped away, the clipboard thudding against his side. The hallway fell silent, leaving me staring at closed door and the tiny life depending on me inside. I closed the door and sank to the floor beside the basket. He raised his head, ears pricking. I whispered, "It's okay," though my voice trembled. I slung an arm around him, feeling his fragile spine beneath my hand. The world felt suddenly too small, an apartment that could be taken, a pup whose every sense was on high alert. My own pulse drummed a frantic rhythm, keep him safe. That night, I rigged a makeshift barrier of boxes to hide his resting spot and convinced a neighbor to keep the hallway quiet. In the dim glow of a single lamp, he ate kibble softened with broth, tail wagging in slow, uncertain arcs. For the first time since the alley, I sensed a flicker of peace in him. Over the next week, I watched him transform. He gained weight, his ribs filling out like soft pillows under my fingers. His breathing steadied. I read to him fragments of news articles, lines of poetry, and he'd lean into my voice as if hearing a melody. I learned the shape of his body, the cadence of his small, hopeful heart. Each evening, I'd press my palm to his chest and marvel at how fierce life could be in such a tiny vessel. But courage has its price. One night, just as I was drifting into restless sleep, I heard it, a gurgling cough, ragged and wet, coming from the basket. I bolted upright. He lay there, eyes rolled back, foaming at the lip. Panic slammed through me like an avalanche. I scooped him up, voice breaking, and raced to the kitchenette, plunging him under the faucet, letting cool water sluice away the bubbles. His body went limp in my arms, a weight I feared would slip away forever. "No," I whispered, choking on the single word. I pressed him to my chest, pressed my mouth to his muzzle, and blew an improvised CPR. Seconds stretched into lifetimes. My lungs burned, sweat slicked my hair. And then, as if summoned by sheer will, his chest heaved. A rattling breath. Another. Tears blurred my vision as I held him upright, murmuring the only prayer I knew. He coughed again, weaker this time, then fell silent, slumped but alive. I spent the rest of the night cradling him, one hand stroking his belly, the other rubbing his ears in tiny circles. Outside, dawn tiptoed across the sky. I called the vet's after-hours line and staggered in with him at first light. They kept him under observation, praising me for quick action. When I finally took him home, the world felt irrevocably changed. I carried him not as a project, but as a brother in arms, two survivors bound by a single, terrifying brush with nothingness. In the weeks that followed, we built a new life within these four walls. I laid down rubber mats with different textures, carpet, tile, rubber, to teach him textures underfoot. We practiced guided walks through the park, me whispering directions, him navigating the path through scent and sound. One afternoon, the sun warm on our backs, I watched him pause at the edge of a fountain spray and tilt his head upward, feeling the mist. His tail wagged in slow circles, as if discovering rain for the first time. I whispered, "You're doing it, buddy. You're alive." And he was. Against every odd, he thrived. A foster family came forward, a quiet couple with gentle voices and no children, just an empty armchair perfect for a blind pup to snuggle. I drove him to their home on a crisp Saturday, his leash wrapped loosely around my wrist. They knelt in their front yard, calling his name softly. He approached, head side to side, sniffing the grass. Then, as if making a decision, he slithered into the woman's lap and settled, content. I knelt beside him, hand on his brindle coat, heart lodged in my throat. "You're safe now," I said, voice thick. She stroked him, whispers of welcome. He leaned into her, tuning their voices like a radio dial finding static-free sound. I stood, tears spilling down, and watched as they carried him inside, our fourth and final location. I realized then that my role wasn't to keep him forever, but to ignite the spark that would carry him forward. Walking away, I paused at the gate, chest tight with both loss and relief. The city stretched beyond, indifferent as ever, but somewhere inside me I carried the echo of his tiny heartbeat, a testament to resilience. What had started as a chance encounter in an alley had become something neither of us could have predicted, a lifeline woven from compassion, fear, and unwavering hope. I thought of his blind eyes, once so empty, now bright with trust. I thought of that moment in the clinic when the monitors flatlined and life trembled on a knife's edge. I thought of teaching him to walk, to drink from a bowl, to feel a breeze against his muzzle. And I understood, he had changed me too. He'd shown me that courage isn't loud, it's the softest whisper that says, keep going, when every sense tells you to stop. As I stepped onto the sidewalk and turned back for one last look, the door closed behind him with a gentle click. The silence that followed was different this time, full of possibility rather than threat. Somewhere inside those walls, a blind puppy slept, dreaming in shadows and light he couldn't see. And I walked on into the city, carrying the memory of his fight, asking myself, when faced with the darkness, could any of us find that same spark to keep going?